बात करेंगे बिजनेस के बेसिक्स और मुनाफे के उस गणित की जो हर निवेशक को पता होना चाहिए। देखिए, स्टॉक मार्केट में पैसा लगाने का मतलब ना सिर्फ कुछ शेयर खरीदना नहीं होता, बल्कि आप एक असली बिजनेस में हिस्सेदार बन रहे होते हैं। इसलिए ये समझना बहुत ज़रूरी है कि कोई भी कंपनी आखिर काम कैसे करती है और असल में पैसा कैसे बनाती है। पहला, बिजनेस का सीधा सा मतलब है लोगों की किसी परेशानी का हल खोजना और उसके बदले पैसे लेना। तो प्रॉफिट क्या है? जब आप इस समाधान को तैयार करने की कुल लागत यानी कॉस्ट से थोड़ा ज़्यादा मार्जिन जोड़कर ग्राहक से चार्ज करते हैं ना, तो बस वही अंतर आपका प्रॉफिट होता है। दूसरा, रेवेन्यू और असली प्रॉफिट के फर्क को पूरी बिजनेस साइकिल से समझते हैं। जहां कंपनी पहले कच्चा माल खरीदती है, प्रोडक्शन करती है और फिर अपना तैयार माल बेचती है। अब मान लीजिए आपके नुक्कड़ का समोसा वाला 1,000 रुपये का कच्चा माल और 600 रुपये गैस या लेबर पर लगाता है, तो कुल लागत हुई 1,600। अगर वो 100 समोसे 25 रुपये पीस के हिसाब से बेचता है तो उसका कुल रेवेन्यू तो 2,500 रुपये हुआ, लेकिन उसका असली प्रॉफिट इस रेवेन्यू में से पूरी लागत घटाकर केवल 900 रुपये ही बचेगा। अंत में, स्टॉक्स को कभी भी लॉटरी की टिकट मानने की गलती बिल्कुल मत कीजिए। केवल अपने दोस्तों या रिश्तेदारों की सुनी सुनाई बातों पर आंख मूंद कर निवेश करने से बचिए, क्योंकि भले ही वो भरोसेमंद हों, पर जरूरी नहीं कि उन्हें उस कंपनी के अंदरूनी मामलों की गहरी समझ हो। स्टॉक मार्केट में जुआ खेलने के बजाय अपना पैसा हमेशा उस कंपनी में लगाएं जिसका बिजनेस मॉडल और मुनाफे का गणित आपको उस समोसे वाले जितना ही साफ नजर आए।
Okay, so I have a pretty simple question for you to start us off today, and I really want you to be honest here. What is the actual difference, like the deep down fundamental difference between opening a brokerage app to buy a stock and walking into a casino and putting your life savings on red?
That is the ultimate question, isn't it? And if we're being brutally honest, for a massive chunk of the population, there's absolutely no difference. They treat the stock market exactly like a slot machine, but with, slightly better PR.
Exactly. They're just hoping a number goes up. Right? It's pure luck. But today, we're going to try and change that perspective entirely for you. We're doing a deep dive into an absolute monster of a resource. We're talking about the Ultimate Stock Market Master Course 2.0 by Sagar Dodeja.
From the channel Civil Beings.
Right. And when we say monster, we really mean it.
Oh yeah, this isn't a quick 20-minute overview. This is 16 and a half hours of incredibly dense content. Dodeja basically took 12 years of practical knowledge, months of pure research, and input from over 25,000 of his students, and distilled it into this single masterclass.
Which is exactly why we're here, to save you those 16 hours and get you straight to the absolute gold nuggets. And what I really love about this source is that Dodeja doesn't start with complex charts or algorithms or Bollinger Bands. He starts with something much more relatable and delicious. He starts with a samosa.
He really does.
Right.
And honestly, it is the absolute perfect place to start. That's actually the whole mission of this deep dive today.
Right.
We aren't just trying to learn how to trade here. We're trying to shift you from a gambler mindset, which is incredibly passive and stressful, to a true business owner mindset.
And that starts with the samosa theory.
Exactly. The samosa theory of business.
I love this so much because it just strips away all the Wall Street jargon that usually keeps regular people out of the game.
It really does. The source defines business in the absolute simplest terms possible. Finding a solution to a problem and charging for it. That is it. That's all business is. And profit. Profit is simply the price of the solution minus the cost to solve it.
Okay, let's walk through the specific example from the course because the math really grounds this concept. So you have a samosa stall owner. He has to buy raw materials, potatoes, flour, oil, some spices. Let's say that costs him 1,000 euros for the day.
Right. But obviously that's not his only cost. He has overheads. He has to pay for the gas to fry them, maybe a helper to serve the customers. Let's just say that's another 600. So before he sells a single samosa, he is in the hole for 1,600.
Okay, so the total cost to solve the problem of people being hungry is 1,600. Now, he produces 100 samosas. If he sells them for 25 each, his total revenue, the actual money in the cash register at the end of the day, is 2,500.
Exactly. So you take that 2,500 in the pocket minus the G1,600 it costs to make them. He is left with 900 profit.
And that 900 is the magic number.
It is the magic number. That is a reward for taking the risk and solving the problem.
Yeah.
Now, here is where it gets super interesting for an investor. If that stall owner just keeps the money under his mattress, he's just a guy with a stall.
Right.
But if he reinvests that profit, he opens the second stall, and then a third, improves his whole supply chain, and eventually builds a huge factory, you stop being just a street stall and you become something massive like Holderum's.
The giant snack brand that is literally everywhere?
Yes. And this is the crucial mental shift we need to make. Buying a stock is simply buying a tiny, tiny share of ownership in that scalable business. You aren't buying a lottery ticket. You are buying a piece of that samosa empire. You are a partner in that stall.
I think that perspective changes everything. If you genuinely view yourself as a partner, you stop obsessing over the stock price every 5 minutes. But Dodeja says before you ever click buy on a stock, you have to ask 2 very specific questions. And if you can't answer them, you should walk away.
This is his ultimate litmus test. Number 1, what is the business? Meaning, what problem do they actually solve for people? And number 2, how do they make a profit doing it?
It sounds so incredibly basic, but I bet half the people trading on their phones right now couldn't answer that for the stocks they hold. They might know the ticker symbol, but they have no idea if the company sells enterprise software or commercial trucks.
Oh, I would absolutely bet you're right. To help with this, the source actually categorizes businesses into 3 clear types. It's a really useful framework. First, you have type 1, which is product-based. Think of Maruti Suzuki making cars or Asian Paints making paint.
Okay, so tangible, physical stuff.
Right. They make a physical thing in a facility, and the profit model is dead simple. The selling price just must be higher than the manufacturing cost.
Then you have type 2, which is service-based.
Correct. Companies like TCS or Zomato, they provide specialized skills or a platform to connect people. Now, Dodeja makes a great point here that margins can be lower because competition is fierce. Technically, almost anyone can start a service company.
But they are highly scalable.
Very scalable. You don't need to build a massive new factory just to add one new client in a service business. You just scale the software or the team.
And then type 3.
Asset-based businesses.
Yeah.
This is your banks like HDFC or big real estate developers like DLF. They make money off assets, giving out loans, selling land, renting huge office buildings. It is a completely different game entirely because you need huge capital up front. You simply can't start a bank in your garage.
That connects directly to how the money actually flows into these companies. The source breaks down revenue models really well. You have got the one-time purchase, like Maruti selling that car. You give them a large sum, they give you a car. The deal is completely done. They have to go find a brand new customer tomorrow to make more money.
Versus something like Netflix, which uses a recurring model. It's a small sum, but they get it every single month. That predictability is absolute gold for investors because you can actually forecast the future revenue.
Or take Zomato, which is a commission model. They just connect the hungry person to the restaurant and take a cut of the transaction. They don't cook a single meal, they just facilitate the deal.
And then the banks, which work on interest. They borrow low from your savings account, paying you maybe 3%, and they lend high to borrowers at 9%. The difference between the two, which is called the spread, is their profit.
So once a company figures out its own samosa model, how it actually makes its money, it usually needs huge piles of cash to grow it. I think a lot of people just assume companies magically appear on the stock market one day, but the source outlines this whole funding ladder.
It is a long journey. It usually starts with just an idea funded out of the founder's own pocket, which is called bootstrapping. That is by far the hardest phase. Then maybe friends and family chip in a little bit. Then come the angel investors.
The wealthy individuals who take a punt on a really risky idea early on.
Exactly. Then, if the idea gets big enough, the venture capitalists, the VCs, come in with serious money. And finally, the very top of the ladder is the IPO, the initial public offering.
Now, this is a part I found super insightful. Why does a company actually go public? I always kind of thought it was just to get rich or fund an expansion. But the source lists 5 specific reasons, and cashing out is actually a massive part of it, but not just for the founder.
Well, raising capital for expansion is definitely the headline reason. Building new factories costs serious money. But you're right. Number 2 is giving an exit to those early investors.
The VCs.
Right. Think about the VCs who put in millions 5 years ago. They want their profit now. They can't pay their own investors with a promise of potential. They literally need to sell their stake to the public to get their cash back out.
That makes total sense. So when we buy into an IPO, we are often just buying the shares from the early investors who are heading for the exit.
In many cases, yes. Then there's brand visibility. Being officially listed on the exchange gives you a ton of credibility. There's also ESOPs, employee stock options, which is using shares to attract top-tier talent without paying huge cash salaries. And finally, using shares as currency for acquisitions. Instead of paying $1 billion in cash to buy another company, you just hand them $1 billion worth of your own company's shares.
Okay, so the company successfully goes public via an IPO. Now we're fully in the market. And Dodeja uses a cricket analogy here that I think is just brilliant to explain the whole ecosystem. I have genuinely never heard it explained quite this clearly.
It is hands down the best way to understand the difference between the primary and secondary markets. And this is exactly where most beginners get totally confused.
So imagine there is a huge cricket match happening, the biggest match of the year. If you buy a ticket officially from Book My Show or the stadium box office, that money goes directly to the stadium organizers. That is the primary market, that's the IPO. The money goes to the company to build the stadium or hire the players.
Correct. But let's say the tickets completely sell out. Now you were standing outside the stadium, desperate to get in. You find a friend or a scalper selling a ticket. You might pay double the price or maybe half the price depending on how popular the match is. But here's the million-dollar question. Who gets that money?
The friend or the scalper. The stadium organizers don't see a dime of that transaction.
Exactly. That is the secondary market. That is the stock exchange, the NSE or the BSE. When you buy a share of Reliance or Tata on your brokerage app today, your money is absolutely not going to Reliance. It is going to another investor out there who is selling their share.
That is a staggering distinction. The company isn't actually getting richer just because their stock price went up by 5% today. The investors are getting richer.
Precisely. The company only got paid once, back at the IPO. After that point, the shares are just trading hands between us fans standing outside the stadium.
And inside this massive stadium, there are several different types of participants. You have the retail investors, that's us, the everyday spectators.
And the source makes a really surprising point right here. It says, statistically, retail investors are often the most successful group of all.
Wait, really? Because I always thought the little guy always gets crushed by Wall Street.
Not if they play their own game. See, we have the ultimate advantage, patience. We aren't under intense pressure to show quarterly returns to a boss like a professional fund manager is. We can just sit and wait out the bad storms for 5 or 10 years. That patience is our true superpower.
But then you have the retail traders.
Ah, yes. The hyperactive participants. They want to make money in minutes or hours. And the source drops a pretty grim statistic here. Over 90% of them lose money over time. They're so often driven by pure greed or the adrenaline thrill of the gamble. They're trying to predict every single ball rather than just sitting back and enjoying the match.
Then you have the absolute big guns, the institutional investors, mutual funds, insurance companies, the ones they call the market movers.
They have staggering bulk buying power and, frankly, massive information advantages. When they decide to move, the entire market shakes. And finally, the promoters. These are the original founders and owners. In India, for example, post-IPO, they generally have to hold at least 25% of the company by law.
Because we want them to have real skin in the game.
Exactly. We want them to feel the pain if the stock price drops. So they are motivated to work incredibly hard to keep it up.
And this leads right into a massive red flag that the source warns everyone about: promoter pledging. It sounds a bit technical, but it is actually really scary when you understand it.
It is a critical warning sign. Imagine the owner of that samosa stall we talked about takes his ownership papers, his actual partnership deed, and mortgages them to a bank just to get a personal loan.
Oof, that sounds like a guy who is in serious financial trouble.
It almost always is. That is what pledging is. If you look up a company and see the promoters have pledged a high percentage of their shares, you need to run away. It's like they have mortgaged their own house, their own company, usually to cover other bad debts. It shows severe financial distress. If the stock price falls, the bank might panic and sell those pledged shares on the open market, crashing the price even further. It becomes a total death spiral.
Okay, so we know who is in the stadium now. We know the big risks. Let's talk about the actual mechanics of it all. What actually happens behind the scenes when I press that little blue buy button on my phone? The source breaks this down into a really neat 9-step journey.
It is fascinating because it feels totally instantaneous to us on the app. Click and you own it. But there is a massive digital relay race happening in milliseconds. Step 1 is simply your decision to buy. Step 2 is placing the order. You might use a market order where you say buy at whatever price is available right this second, or a limit order where you say buy this only if the price drops to exactly 100.
Then the broker steps in and checks if you actually have the money. They run KYC checks and fund checks.
Yep. Then the order flies over to the exchange, the NSE or BSE. And this is where the real magic happens. The matching engine.
This part sounds straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It essentially is. These are massive supercomputers. They are the ultimate financial matchmakers. They scan millions of orders to find a seller who is willing to sell at the exact price you want to buy.
It's essentially a high-speed dating app for money.
That is a perfect way to put it. Buyer seeks seller for a long-term profitable relationship. Once the computer finds the match, step 6 is trade execution. You get a little ping and a confirmation on your screen. But get this, the shares aren't actually yours yet.
Right, because physically, or I guess digitally swapping the ownership officially takes a bit of time. That brings us to clearing and settlement.
Exactly. Corporations like NSDL or CDSL step into the picture. They act as the referees. They ensure the swap actually happens legally and safely. They take the money out of your account and give it to the seller, and they take the shares from the seller and formally assign them to you.
And finally, step 9 is T+1 settlement.
Yes. In India, for example, the shares hit your demat account the very next morning. It used to take weeks back in the days of paper certificates. Now the whole cycle is done in 24 hours.
And the price we see ticking up and down on the screen during all this madness, the source heavily emphasizes that this is purely based on supply and demand.
There's no guy sitting behind a curtain setting the price. There's no special committee deciding that Tata Motors should be worth $900 a day. The market is just a massive voting machine. If there are 1,000 buyers demanding shares and only 100 sellers, the price naturally moves up. If everyone is panicking and dumping shares and absolutely no one wants to buy, the price crashes.
But sometimes that machine just goes crazy. Panic is highly contagious. And that is exactly where safety nets come into play. I actually didn't know these existed until I read this part. Circuit breakers.